Welcome to the Renegade Context podcast. This week I had the opportunity to talk to Mark Olver. Mark Olver was in Belfast with the BBC Comedy Awards, and I thought I would take the opportunity to pull him to one side and ask him a few questions. So Mark very graciously agreed, and here is the result. So with no further ado, my conversation with Mark Olver.
So tell me about the podcast.
So I've just been talking to people about their experiences as performers and what they have learned from performance, what they like about performance, what they think is important.
Cool.
And
How many have you done?
I've done 5 so
Amazing.
far. Yeah. So this will be the 6th.
Different types of performers?
So far mostly comedians, but talking to them, they've all had different backgrounds.
Yeah.
Which is lovely. So I didn't know I did one with Rory McSwiggan, and it turns out he started off as a performance artist.
Oh, okay.
So I got to sort of talk to him about
That's
that.
stuff as well. Oh, that's good.
Yeah. So I love the theory of stuff. Yeah. So,
Well, I'll follow your lead.
brilliant. So Mark Olver, have I pronounced that correctly?
You have indeed.
Excellent. Would you like to tell me a little bit about yourself? First, as what sort of performer you are, where you perform and that sort of thing.
So I see myself as a stand-up. I am a stand-up comedian. That's really important, I say that, because I would say 90% of what I do now is TV warm-up.
Right.
So I am a comedian.
Yeah.
But I don't do as much comedy as I like to.
Right. And when you say comedy, you mean like in the bars with
in
those
clubs,
sort of audiences?
I'm a club comic. I do clubs and I do theatres. I do weekend gigs. I do student gigs. I go everywhere. I do festivals. I did a lot of festivals this summer, but I do a lot of TV warm up. So I work in studios when the audience are coming in, get them up. Go on if something goes wrong. My job is to create the vibe.
Very different from doing the clubs and the bars?
The bits of your brain are the same.
Yeah.
The mechanics and the way you do it, I think, are a little bit different.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you when you go into a comedy club and firstly, the audience are paid to be there.
Yes.
And they've paid to watch the comedy.
Yeah.
In TV studios, they've not paid to see me. They've not paid at all because they're free.
Oh, okay.
So that's the start.
Do people just queue up for those things?
They apply.
Oh,
so there's a
okay.
couple of audience companies that get people in for those
Right.
shows. Then you've also got, when you're sat as an audience member waiting for your comedy to start, and you've got your drink, you've got the music playing, and you're with your date, and you know it's going to last a bit, and there'll be a break, and then you'll be able to watch some more and then go home. In a TV studio, the lights are on. There are cameras moving around.
Yeah.
There are people finishing painting sets, and there are
Yeah.
people moving you around, and no one introduces me. No DJ goes, "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mark Olver." The floor man will just go, "Yeah, you're out." And so I just walk out and go, "All right." The mechanics.
There's distractions everywhere.
The distractions everywhere, and also it's light. In comedy clubs it's dark and a bit dingy, and the audience can hide.
Yes.
But in TV studios, like, if they're there, we want to see them. So, everything is on, and so my job is to kind of to create an environment that works in spite of it being a bit tricky.
Yeah. And do you prefer that to actually doing the shows themselves then? Is that something you'd be interested in doing?
No, I've not really got the motivation. I've never really wanted to be on the shows.
Yeah. Because that would be different mechanics again then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've done a couple. I've done bits and pieces, but not loads. I like being behind the scenes. I love doing warm-up.
Yeah.
But I also love doing comedy.
Yeah.
But if I only did comedy, I don't think I would enjoy just doing comedy. I like having warm-up as well.
Yeah.
Having the two works really well for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. With performance, once you start getting into it, you do realise there's so many different avenues. Like, there isn't just, I think a lot of people doing stand-up would think of stand-up as you say, comedy clubs. And then, of course, there's the TV, which is obvious because we see it. But yeah, all these little different background ways of doing
And
stuff.
also things like doing corporate gigs.
Yeah.
And doing...
How do you find corporate gigs? As a circus performer, I've done corporate gigs, and
do you know what?
It really depends on the gig.
Yeah, you're right. I don't mind them. I don't mind them. I don't do loads, and when I do them, I tend to host them. So I tend and I host them as a warm up, and then you read out all the awards that have won.
Right. Yes,
I've rarely done.
So they'd already be involved in that because they want to know what the awards are.
I've rarely done. Do 15 minutes in front of the engineers of Britain or something like that. It would do my head in. However, I think my skill set leads me to those sorts of things because what I do on stage involves the audience. And corporate gigs want it to be about them.
Yes.
They want it to be, take the mickey out of my friend over there, talk about the boss of the company. And because of what I do, I'm going to do that anyway. So... Yeah.
Do you have a bit of time to get to know them first? Do you get a little bit of information?
Not loads, but I also do that while I'm on. I do that as part of the set, and I'm kind of chatting to them and playing with them. And I play lots of games and sort of mess about a little bit. I think if you go into a corporate expecting it to feel exactly like a weekend gig.
Yeah.
Or a lovely street gig.
They always tend to pay quite well, which takes the sting out of a bad corporate
gig. A lot of the rules, one of the rules someone tells me is, the worse you think it's going to be, the more you should charge.
Yes. That's a really good bit of information because I once saw on one of the forums, I can't remember who it was, but it was some of the best information I've ever got for charging is... the less you want to do it, the more you charge, and the more you want to do it, you can have your set price.
Yeah.
Or
I think that's a really nice way of looking at it. And I absolutely love it. I MC a lot, so I compare a lot when I do comedy, and have compared a lot since the beginning of starting stand up, and it's something that I'm good at. It's something that I really enjoy. Not everyone who compares ends up being really good at warm-up.
Right.
Because the skills are slightly different. What you have to do is slightly different.
How would you say, what differs between, say, an average MC and a warm-up MC?
So, okay. I'm fully aware this is a podcast, but I'm going to be using some visual aids.
Okay.
So, when you are a compare, your triangle is the point of that triangle is the audience. So when you're comparing at a gig, you walk on stage and your point of the triangle, so you're the wide bit of the triangle, and the point is the audience. And you're going, what is your name? Where are you from? What do you do? And you're doing that to find the funnies. Right. You're doing that to go, what do you do? Ha ha, stupid job. What's your name? You two dating? Oh, look at that. I can't believe it. That's funny. Yeah. Funny. That's what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
With warm-up, the point changes.
Okay.
Because your job is not to try and be funny. Your job is not to be a sniper and to get that one and that one and that one. Yeah. My job is to make the audience, is to make the noise, the sound that the audience make as a whole, the right noise. I want it big and round. I want everyone involved. I want them clapping and whooping. I want when
sounds very much like street shows.
It is. Oh yeah, no, it's a little bit more like street.
Yeah.
And that what you want is
you can't single them out too much, or you lose.
Yeah.
You lose
and
so
also, I don't want to single them out because the aim is not the joke.
Yeah.
The aim is not the laugh. The aim is to make the big noise.
Yeah.
I happen to do that through the medium of the joke. I happen to do that through the medium of being a funny person.
Yeah.
But the aim is to get the big... So I don't want to go, how long have you two been dating? Oh, we've been together 6 months. I want, who's single? Hooray! Right. Who's not single? Who's from a shithole? Hooray! Who's from... I don't want to pinpoint and go, where are you two from? Oh, we're from Lurgan. Oh, funny. I want, who's from somewhere worse than Lurgan? You over there? I want... Yeah,
you're bringing them all together. You're making a crowd, a mob mentality.
Yeah, 100%. I am absolutely attempting to create a giant group of Pavlov's dogs
Yes.
to laugh at the signifiers, to laugh at the things that are happening.
Yeah.
And I do that by being funny. You know, I do that by being funny, but that's not the aim. If I'm out there and the audience are brilliant for the show, and I've not been the funniest person in the world, if they're brilliant for the show, I'm getting brought back.
Yeah.
You know,
you have warmed them up sufficiently.
They're there.
Yeah.
And actually, sometimes you don't want them too warm, because sometimes you might go, you end up having to do longer. So you might do 10 to 15. Sometimes it might be 20 to 25, and you're like, okay, well, I'm changing the gear a little bit, and I'm going to do more stuff, more stand up, and it turns into a stand up gig. These recordings can be 3 hours long.
Wow.
You don't want to wear them all out before people have come out. You want to get them in the right place.
So if the show is, because I'm aware what we see on TV is not what happens. We see the nice edited.
You see the
together.
lovely edited version.
Yeah. So presumably there's a lot of points in the middle of the show that they have to stop and redo things.
Yeah, and different shows are different as well.
Yeah.
So some shows, so I do The Last Leg, which is a live show.
I love The Last Leg. It's fantastic.
Yeah, so I can go on at the beginning, get them up, and I don't have to worry about pacing then, because they've got an hour. Boom, let's do it.
Yeah.
You know. I'll go on during the ad breaks and just... We did one once at The Last Leg where we were in a studio, slightly different studio in a place called Wimbledon, and the air conditioning had broken. And it was the hottest day of the year. And so during the ad breaks, rather than warming them up...
People do not like funny when it's hot. They don't.
Like fun. So we just turned the lights off during the ad break, and I said to them, okay, I'm not going to make you work hard. We're just going to close our eyes for a bit, knowing that in 3 minutes' time we got to come back and go massive for 20 minutes.
So you could have almost hypnotised them into a nice sort of state of calm,
really
funny.
Take them down. Really take them down, and
have a nap.
Sometimes people will say to me, like, what's the secret? What do you do? How do you get the audience to where you want them to go? How do you get them to make the noises that you want them to make? Often I just ask. I'm like, I don't suppose you lot can make loads of noise now. And they'll be like, yeah, all right, woo! Because people inherently want to help and please. And, you know.
There's a theory about... sort of catharsis, and in theatre people would sometimes go to theatre, and often comedy. I think comedy is definitely a cathartic type of experience for people, but every day when you're at work, and whatever your job is, you might be a teacher, you might work in an office, you don't get to make noise. That's not something that you're socially acceptably allowed to do. Whereas at this time it's like, how often do you get to scream at the top of your lungs?
Absolutely. But also So how many gigs do you think you would do a month, on a good month? Like stand-up gigs?
Stand-up gigs, not many. I do 2 or 3. I've not been pushing it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But, even though you're not gigging loads, you're still going to more gigs every 6 months than the majority of the population go to in their lifetime. I know we see regulars at gigs.
Yeah.
We see them on the front row. But most of the time, people have been to comedy once. Or twice, or never. Who's never been to a comedy club?
That's a crazy thought, isn't it?
Yeah. And TV studios are even more extreme.
Yeah.
There's loads of regulars in TV studios, but then you're like, who has never done this before?
Yeah.
And so my job is also to acclimatise them to how they can behave.
Yeah.
And I always think this, my mum and dad, when I was a kid, my mum used to work in the cinema. And nowadays, my mum and dad haven't been to the cinema for years. If my mum and dad go to the cinema, they get so confused. Especially because it's all changed now. And it's QR codes. And sometimes there's delivering to your seat. And you've got to order there and order there. They don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
I
just want to buy your popcorn and sit down.
My stepdaughter is a trainee opera singer.
Oh, wow.
And I've not been to many of the operas. But if I go... I'm like, I don't know what to do. Do I behave? What do I like? Do I clap at the end of every movement, song? Interval acts.
Do you clap at all?
Do I sing
It
along?
might be completely inappropriate.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. And all these other people are there just loving it, and they know exactly what to do. They can relax into it. It's like church.
Yes.
You know, that, going, growing up going to Catholic church and, kneeling, standing,
Good fun
handshakes.
to stand or kneel when you're not supposed to and see how many people follow you.
Yeah, exactly. And so when I'm emceeing and when I'm doing warm up, my brain is going, I want to make this a uniform experience. I want to make this experience is good for that person over there and that person over there. That person who goes to loads of gigs to that person who's never been to a gig to that group over there in their stag do. If I can try and bring them all together and create the unit, then that's what I'm doing.
And by the sounds of it, when you describe your triangle, it sounds like you do quite a lot of audience interaction.
Loads, because if you're doing warm-up, if you're not doing a stand-up show, and I've done warm-up for shows where there is stand-up, and if I'm doing one of those, I will throw in jokes, I'll throw in bits.
Yeah.
I've done sitcoms, and sitcoms can last for 5 hours, 6 hours.
Oh, wow.
And I'm on and off every 3 minutes for 10 minutes. Wow. Just on and off all the time. I'm knackered when I do a sitcom.
I'd say so.
And by the end, I gave someone this advice once, because they were doing their first sitcom. I was like, don't do any material for the first 3 hours. Because by the end of 3 hours, you'll be so bored of your own chat, you will want to do material just to go, I'm doing some stuff. And the audience will be like, oh, thank God he's not asking me about crisps and chocolate and nonsense anymore. If you do your material at the beginning, you run out of material.
Yeah, and when your brain fatigues, it's harder to think up new and creative stuff.
So you do your stuff towards the end. But most of the time, if I'm doing warm-up for, especially when I've done shows that aren't comedy shows, like game shows. I mean, I did 3,000 episodes of Deal or No Deal alone.
Is that the one with the box?
That is the one with the boxes.
That's Noel Edmonds.
That's Noel Edmonds with the boxes. I did 3,000 episodes of Deal or No Deal.
How many is... Wow, there's only like 365 days in a year.
Yeah. We did it for 10 years.
Wow.
There was a point when Deal or No Deal was so successful that we were doing it during the day. So we would record 4 shows a day.
Yeah.
They would show one at 4:00, and then they'd show another one at 8:00.
Oh my God.
Because it was so popular. People just loved it. They just couldn't get enough of it. Doing weekends. Crazy. We were doing live shows. We were doing... Yeah, and I did so many of them. But when you're doing that, you do a little bit of material. Feels like you're doing... Feels like you're bringing in something from somewhere else. It feels like you've got a Sunday roast and you've just brought in a kebab. And it's like, well, why am I eating that?
It doesn't feel right.
Because I love chips, but and I love a Sunday roast. Yeah. I'm not having chips with my Sunday roast.
No, unless there's gravy on the chips, I'd be okay.
Oh, would you be all right with
I'd
that?
be okay.
Okay. but that it just feels incongruous.
Yeah.
To have that happening in that situation.
Yeah.
And also swearing. I will do a bit of filth, a bit of swearing when I'm doing the show because I'm preparing them for the show. So if I know that show is going to be a bit filthy, I don't want the first time they hear someone drop some F-bombs to be during the show. So
they're prepared for it. They know it's coming.
They know the tone. It's about tone.
Yes.
And I think when you talk about performing and when you talk about doing well, especially having a street background, what you're really good at is hitting the right tone. So, and it's almost a sixth sense. I think it's practice, and it's experience, but it's going. It's not just one of my weaknesses as a stand-up is that I'm always in the room.
Right.
So, friends of mine can just pick a point at the back of the room, no matter what's happening in the room, play their material to the back of the room.
I'm definitely not that comedian.
Fights can be breaking out. Stuff can be happening. Me, I hear a squeaky door. I'm like, what's that squeaky door?
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah.
Can I do a joke that coincides with the squeak of the door? You know,
Yeah.
for my job, for warm up and MCing, being in the room is really useful because I'm there. I'm not removed from it. I'm right in the centre of it all. I see everything that's going on. I can swap. I've had audience members come up to me, or I've met people, and I've gone, I think I recognise you from an audience. You know how people...
That's crazy. I would not... I don't even recognise people I've done gigs with.
how people recognise comedians. I recognise audience members. I'm like, weren't you there the other week? You were 3 rows back behind that bloke.
Yeah.
It's mad.
You got some kind of savant skill.
I don't know what it is. I just it's also because I do it a lot.
Yeah.
You know that whole Malcolm Gladwell quote about 10,000
hours, yeah.
I did 3,000 episodes of Deal or No Deal alone. You know,
I find that with the scene in Northern Ireland, like we were talking about how it's a little bit more difficult to get gigs here. One of it is a lack of gigs, and I'm sure there's a bunch of reasons I don't know as well. But I'm finding myself, having come from a street background, I used to do 2 hours a day, every day, as many days as I wanted to, and I got good very quickly. I know street performers who hadn't done as much as I did in the first year in their first 5, because I tend to get a little bit obsessive when I throw myself at something. But you just can't do that for stand-up because you're so reliant on the space that's available, the amount of people who are vying for that space, who's running the space, is your material appropriate? There's so many different factors. It's not a street. You can't just stand out there.
It's
and get
really
attention.
interesting you should say that, because when I talk to actor friends of mine, I'm like, do you know what? The best thing about stand-up is that you don't have to wait for the rehearsals, for the blocking, for the lighting guy, for the, like, I've got this big thing at the moment about people think that acting is very much a collaborative pursuit because there's lots of people on stage and they all rehearse together.
Yes.
But we all know when we talk to actors, they're in it for themselves.
Yes.
They they want the show to go well, but they want
even the most collaborative are only collaborating with the people they are speaking lines to.
Yeah. Whereas stand-up, people think that stand-up is a solo pursuit because we're on our own.
Yeah.
But when you talk to stand-ups, when you have a car journey with stand-ups, when you do all this, actually you realise that stand-up is so collaborative. You do a joke and a friend of yours will go, oh mate, I'll tell you what, that'd be a really good topper for that bit. Or have you noticed how the audience don't really get that bit, so you should do that joke there. Stand-up is so collaborative. Stand-up drama and stuff is very much a solo pursuit, but you have to wait for those rooms. You have to wait for the lighting guy. You have to wait for the sound person.
You have to do the 50,000 auditions to get the certain number of plays.
When I started doing stand-up, I joined a little theatre company for a couple of months to see that exercising that other muscle. Yeah. And I think we did a whole session one afternoon on blocking through the curtain call. You know, like, oh yeah, you're gonna have to stand there. You stand there, right? The lights will come on then. Okay, here we go. Right, and I was like,
the cue to cue runs.
I don't know, what are you talking about? Yeah.
Surely you should know this. Do I need to be here?
But it's really interesting that you should use the same criticisms or limitations of stand-up as I do for drama, and I wonder whether that's because I live in a city now where I live in Bristol where everyone seems to run their own gig. Yeah. And
I think there's some great gigs here. I mean, the Pavilion on Monday nights is fantastic, and that's where I get most of my gigs. Rory runs the Chicken Box in Derry. He does amazing gigs. He will contact me quite regularly and give me a spot. Now, part of it is I haven't turned up to these gigs outside of when I'm doing. That's my own neurodivergence and that's my own issues. And I know that's how people get most of their gigs. Yeah. Is they
my prediction for Belfast is that this time next year there'll be twice as many gigs.
Okay, that's good.
And in 2025 there'll be that growth is exponential.
So what you're saying is get on the ground floor now
I am a little bit. I am a
Get
little
your
bit.
gig together.
I am, because
Yeah.
you see it. You see that. You see that, right? Is it a thing that if I could either give you £100,000, or I could put 2p into your account one day, 4p the next day, 8p the next day, and within a very short period of time, you've got £1 million.
It's that tipping point, isn't it? It feels like a very small amount until the tipping point, and then it's doubling. It's just doubling and doubling,
And you realise that very, very quickly,
it's worth a lot more.
a city that has got maybe 3 or 4 comedy nights a week, one's monthly, blah, 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 you look around and you go, oh, wow, there's 15, you know. Yeah. And I genuinely think that'll happen. No, for me, comedy is just about, it's not just about stage time. People get obsessed with stage time.
Yeah, okay.
It's about gig miles as well. And gig miles are the idea that not everyone you perform to is always going to be the same.
Yes.
So if you just do street in Covent Garden, if you just do street,
you become good at doing street in Covent Garden.
Exactly.
I found that when I was moving around a lot, because I cut my teeth on street in Dublin. Now, Dublin, how much time did you spend in Dublin?
A bit, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a bit grim in certain ways. There's a lot of heroin in Dublin. Look, I've no problem with heroin addicts at all. I like them not to be heroin addicts, because it's not a healthy thing to do.
No.
But people have this sort of fear of them. Don't be afraid of them. They have no coordination. And
good point.
If you tell them to fuck off, they will leave you alone for the most part. But in Dublin, it means that when you are doing shows, you tend to have to deal with maybe a heroin junkie that doesn't know you and has decided they want to be part of your show.
Okay.
You have to deal with an audience that could be the best audience you've ever had or the worst audience, and they still will not fuck off.
Yeah.
They'll just stay there watching you and hating you. But they'll stay. I don't know. It's weird. So when I was cutting my teeth, I got kind of the worst of it, but I loved it. It was amazing. And then when I went to other towns that were easier, I was like, okay, there's a lot I don't have to deal with, but I also have to make all of my jokes palatable and acceptable in a way that they'd understand. You know, you can't just make Dublin jokes if you're in London. No one's going to get them.
And also it's about expectations as well. And it's about what we said about not going to the opera. A lot of people won't have seen Street, so you have to bring them in. You have to let them know that
this
moment.
This is when you shout, this is when you clap, this is when you...
This is sort of how you... I'm just helping you. I know, and that is my job. My job is, I want them to have the best night. I want them to have the best TV recording. I've been doing this for long enough that I sort of know that if you listen to me, if you put yourself in my hands, I'll give you what you want. You know, I will give you...
And there's the confidence there. You know, you've tried it so many times.
Yeah.
You've done it to so many different people.
Yeah. No, I know.
Yeah.
And it's it feels a bit cocky sometimes. Yeah. And that's the great thing about comedy is that, you know, audiences will absolutely destroy your confidence, and you're all like, yeah, here we go, and then one day it's like, boom,
nothing.
No.
Yeah.
But actually, it's like that idea of corporates, you know, they will destroy you.
They will. I think you need to be actively hated by an audience at least once in your career.
I think you need to be actively hated a couple of times a year. I do. I think you need to properly be able to... I think failure is so important.
Yeah.
I think you learn... It feels like a cliche. You learn more from a bad gig than a good gig. But you know what? You actually do.
If you sit down and take it, I mean, you can walk away, and I've done it. I know every street performer has done it at one point, and I'm sure every comedian has done it and gone, oh, shit crowd. Do you know?
Yeah.
And gone,
but when you're talking about writing material, and you're talking about creating material, and you do that, you have the guts to go, I'm doing a whole new 10 tonight, and you die on your ass. What you could do is go away and work out why that stuff died on itself. You have an idea. You have an idea in your head that is funny. and you've communicated that to an audience, and that audience have gone, guess what, mate?
It's not.
It's not. And you'll go, shit, they are right. And so you go away and you think about moving that bit to there, and you think about adding that line, and you think about finding a joke that explains that bit. And there's nothing better. I like sport. I like football. I like all sport. And when you watch, and I don't play as much as I used to, but you know, when you score a goal and the joy of it.
Yeah.
And you go, wow, I did that.
Yeah.
That's like comedy. When you are working on a bit for a while, and then you nail it, and you go, that is it. That's the bit. That's how that bit works. And then 2 weeks later, you'll be doing it, and someone will go, oh, you know, if you did that, that'd be even bigger. And you do it again, and you go, oh my God, it's even better. Like that excitement of creating. I think of stand-up like a big Lego set. That we've got these word pieces to play with, and we can build anything we want, and we can put them anywhere we want, and we can play with it and create all that stuff.
And do you think there's any hard and fast rules, or is it something you just got to keep doing? So
I had this idea once of charging loads of money, like £1,000 a day.
Ooh.
Residential course, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Okay.
Comedy course. And I'd walk out on the first day, and I'd go, be funny, and then I'd leave.
I'll see you in 3 days.
Yeah, and then I'd go back on the Saturday, and I'd go work hard, and then I'd leave. And then I'd go back on the third day, and I'd go, don't be a dick. And I'd leave. And that's it. Work hard, be funny, don't be a dick. If you can do those three things, often, I don't tell many people this, often you get away with only doing 2 of them.
Yeah, I've heard this about what is it? Cost, speed, and quality.
Okay.
You get 2 out of 3.
Yeah, because I know people who are dicks, but they work incredibly hard and they're incredibly funny.
So funny that you just can't say no to them.
Or they are so funny. Yeah. There is, I think, the funny people. If you've only got one of them, it's really difficult. I do think you can't do it with just.
So they have to be a hard worker and funny, or not a dick and funny, or
all that sort of stuff. Yeah. If you're not funny, and you're a dickhead, but you work hard, you're not going to do well.
What if you're?
Are we doing all of them?
Yeah, I think we're going to do all of them.
All combination.
What if? Yeah, I think work hard is probably one of the most important ones.
Oh, work hard is important, but the thing about stand up,
you can have a natural.
It's if you work hard,
to make people laugh.
Yeah, but also no matter how hard you're working, if you've wound everyone up, and you're a dickhead to them, they don't want to be near you. Yeah. Going back to that collaborative thing.
Yes.
Yeah, you can work hard. You can write all day, but if you write all day and you're not funny, you're just writing. You know.
Yeah.
And if you need an audience, you need an audience, and to get an audience, you need to be nice because people want you to.
Producers.
Yeah. They want to book you. Yeah, work hard, be funny, don't be a dick.
What if you work hard and you're nice, but you're not funny?
I've seen those people do okay.
Yeah.
I've seen those people do okay.
I've seen people like that get booked for festivals, for sure.
Oh,
in the circus, they'll do the street show and you're like, there's nothing funny about this, but hey.
But also with stand-up, you can work hard and find the formula.
Yeah.
So you might not be funny, but you can play funny. You can pretend to be funny. You can seem like you're funny.
Yeah.
You know, walks like a duck, quacks like a duck. It's a duck.
Yeah.
You know, you can do that.
It's Jack Russell in disguise.
Exactly. Yeah, just quacking it on. Yeah. And it's true. You can get away with it.
Yeah.
And you can have a fairly successful career, but you're not going to do anything interesting, imaginative.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to be an engineer. You'll build some brilliant comedy bridges, some comedy, buildings, but you're not going to create the lovely comedy work of art. You're not going to look at the thing and see something different and create it. It's going to be functional, and functional can be fine.
Yeah.
You know,
Sure. You probably need a certain amount of functional people to kind of keep things going anyway.
I think, yeah, I think so. I think so. And it makes the other people more interesting compared to the functional people.
It was a bit sad for the functional people.
Yeah, it is. But you know what? They're earning, aren't they?
They're earning. And if you know who you are as well as a performer, like if you know, because I've seen people who have this notion. You see a lot with acting, with the young actors. You see it with the fewer street performers because they tend to be delusional in a different way. But the idea of getting discovered, and a lot of musicians on the street, they're out there with their Instagram accounts and they're going, somebody is gonna come along, but they're not. And some of them do well. Some of them do well because they're out there so often that the practice alone makes them better at what they're doing, and then they'll move on to something else. But there are those people who think it just means just showing up and that's it.
I tell this story quite a lot. But it's one of the best ways of explaining, for me, how to do it. So, I used to do a live chat show about comedy in Edinburgh. And do you know Richard Osman hosts Pointless? Used to host Pointless. He now... writes books,
I know his face
and they're very successful. He's very tall, 6'7", glasses. He was the sidekick on Pointless, the BBC One quiz show. You'll recognise him.
Yes, I'm sure.
He's famous.
Okay.
His brother is in Suede, the band.
Oh, okay. Suede, I know.
Yeah. His brother looks a bit like.
It's been years since I watched any.
His brother
TV.
His brother looks a bit like Rich. He's also tall. Anyway, Richard is famous. And I was doing this show, and Richard said, and he's really smart, he's one of the smartest men I've ever met. He was a TV producer before going front of camera, and then he left front of camera to write books, and his books are like, they sell millions, you know. Wow. They're very successful.
That says Thursday for books as well.
The Thursday Murder Club. They're called.
Thursday Murder Club.
If you look next time you go into a WH Smith's or anywhere, Waterstones, Thursday, the new one came out a couple of days ago. Okay. You'll see them everywhere.
Okay.
Yeah, and he said to me a couple of years ago, he said, "No one's famous," and I said, "What are you talking about, Richard?"
Says the famous person.
Says the famous person. He said, "No one's famous," and I went, "Rich, I've lived in a house with John Richardson, Russell Howard and John Robbins. Everyone I've ever lived in a house with, Matt Ewins as well, has been nominated and or won the main Perry Award in Edinburgh." I said, I know famous people. You are a famous person. There are famous people.
Yeah.
And he said, no, there's not famous people. He said, there's no point in trying to be famous. That was the point.
Right.
He was like, there's no point in trying to be famous because famous people do not exist. And I said, they do exist, Rich. They're everywhere. And he was like, you line them up at a queue. You start at this door. You've got every comedian at the Edinburgh Festival. After that, you've got everyone who's in a High School Musical show that's come over from America. You line them up as well. You line all the sketch shows up, you line the actors up. Then you line the people up from the International Festival and the ballets, the operas, the orchestras. You line all these people up who'd like to be famous. Then you line up all the people who are applying to be on Britain's Got Talent, local radio DJs, touring DJs, kids magicians, street entertainers, everyone who's got a picture in Spotlight, the acting magazine, everyone who's been to an audition, everyone who's in amateur theatre, everyone who's a poet, everyone who wants to perform. You line all of those people up outside this door, and then you have a number of who the famous people are, and there's so many people in that queue that the famous ones are such a small amount that they're almost a statistical anomaly. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
That is an astoundingly small number.
Yeah.
I've not even included local radio DJs. Weather people. That number. Nowadays, YouTubers and TikTokers and Instagrammers, they all want to be famous, and you go, this is brilliant. But you can't, but what is the point, Richard's point was, what is the point of aiming for something that is statistically non-existent?
Yeah.
So, Don't aim for that. Just aim to be good.
Yeah.
Aim to be the best you could be at what you do.
Absolutely. And success doesn't necessarily mean fame.
No.
You can be very successful at what you do as a performer.
I do all right for myself, and I'm not famous.
If you're making a living, I think that's a pretty good, bar to reach.
That's
not an easy thing to do.
The other great, the Holy Grail, I suppose, the pillars of wisdom that I use in my life are game show hosts and Sister Act 2.
That's such a good movie.
I love Sister Act 2. I love Sister Act 2.
Sing along to all those movies.
I like Sister Act 1. I love Sister Act 2. Sister Act 2 is on the telly, and it often is, because it's often on like ITV3 or something. Yeah. I can't turn away from Sister Act 2. I love
those kids are going to learn a lesson.
I love Sister Act 2. And there's a bit in Sister Act 2 where the Whoopi Goldberg, dressed as the nun, is talking to the young girl who's played by pre-fame Lauryn Hill.
Yes, yeah, she was.
And she's talking to her about this writer. She gives her the book. I can't remember the name of the writer. She gives her the book, and she's trying to convince this girl to be a singer. And she uses the example of this writer saying, if you wake up every day wanting to be a writer, you are a writer. And I feel like that about stand-up.
Yeah.
I feel like every day I wake up and I want to do it, and I get passionate about it.
Yeah.
Stand-up is the only thing. I think there's an Eric Sykes quote where he said, you don't decide you're a comedian, the audience decide you're a comedian.
That's very true, yeah. And they decide quite quickly.
I know. But when you're passionate about it, when you love it that much, you will do it.
So you've talked about theatre a bit there. Did you have a theatre background? Is that something that you tried out for?
No, I just tried it out a little bit.
Yeah.
I like it. Yeah. I love...
But it doesn't hit the same...
Nothing. No, that's because stand-up's the best thing in the world.
Yeah.
Stand-up is the best art form in the world. We can argue this.
I wouldn't argue
Good.
that. No.
People will. People listening to this podcast are going to go, he's talking nonsense. It's not the best art form in the world. It is the best art form in the world. And the reason it's the best art form in the world is because everyone can do it. Because it's a bit like the reason football is the most popular sport in the world is that you just put down jumpers for goalposts. That's a famous phrase. Or you roll up a ball and you kick it against the wall, and you try and do overhead kicks on your mum and dad's bed when you're a kid. And everyone can play football. And although stand-ups, we like lights and cameras, we like sound, and we like people facing the right direction and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But the reason we love it is because everyone can do it.
Yeah.
Everyone can do it.
I do think, like, I've done a lot of different types of performance, and it's just, for me, I think it's performance all around. I love just learning about it, and I love trying out different. So this is the latest iteration of what I've been doing. But out of the last two, so went pretty much directly from street shows to stand-up, and I like making people laugh. Yeah. It's a nice feeling, and it's a joyous thing to bring to the world, isn't it?
How do you feel about the writing element of it compared to the...
I haven't sat down and actually done it properly. So what I've done is I have a bunch of notes and a bunch of ideas, and I tend to sort of expound them on stage. Which is exactly how I would have done it for a street show. But with a street show, you got to keep talking to keep people interested. So you have all this time in the world to like play with your ideas. And because I was doing 4 shows a day, by the end of the week, that 30 minutes would be very different to the beginning of the week. And, with stand-up, I get so bored so quickly with saying the same thing. If I get up and do a 5 minutes or a 10 minutes, I don't want to do that 10 minutes again the next time I'm up. I just, unless I got to do it 4 times a day, every day.
Yeah. Are you slightly inflicted?
Many things I'm inflicted with.
This might be...
Which one is it?
It might be racist. I'm excited about this one.
Oh, I like
because I've done it. But I'm trying to use it as an adjective. Are you inflicted by the Blarney?
Yes. Absolutely.
Because
I am a shy talker.
Because my grandparents, when we discovered them, long story, lived near Cork. They're in Middleton. My aunt was in Middleton, and so we would go down that part of the world when we were kids. And so I kissed the Blarney Stone when I was 7. Have you done it?
I haven't. I heard you have to hang out a window.
You do have to hang off the top and go back.
There's such an Irish. Do you know how that started? That's bound to have just been a bunch of drunk lads going, "Oh yeah, that stone up there is pure lucky, lads." I bet if you hang out that window there.
Yeah, I kissed the Blarney Stone very young.
Oh, so that's how it all started for you.
And so I'm guessing the Blarney. Have you got the Blarney? You knew exactly what I meant.
Yeah.
Is named after the Blarney Stone?
I think so, yeah.
Because it's Castle Blarney.
Yeah,
so
we'd also call it the gift of the gab, which
that's
is a very Irish thing. Like,
yeah. And that ability to just chat. I think everyone has it. All cultures have a version of it. We've just seemed to have made it an Irish thing.
Yeah.
I don't know how and why.
No, I think that there's very different ways of socializing in England compared to Ireland. I find English people a lot more straightforward, and now I lived there for 5 years when I was a child, and I've been autistic my entire life. I find it's easier to be autistic in England because you can ask a direct question and get a direct answer.
Yeah.
You'll never get a direct answer here. Have you tried to get a direct answer out of Irish people?
Yeah,
It's really fucking hard.
Yeah, like who is my grandfather?
Yeah. Well, you know, if you start at the other side of town.
And is there also, I suppose there's very much an oral tradition in Ireland.
Yeah.
You know, when you look at, I was reading a book. It's, for want of a better description, a mum book. Okay. And part of it's set in Ireland, and set in Ireland in the sort of 20s and to the 40s, which is where my nan lived in Ireland, and when my mum was born in 1948.
Very different time,
so,
yeah.
Well, I mean, mad. And like the description in this book of how Ireland was at that time, outside of Dublin, going down to West Cork, going into Kerry.
You're lucky if you got a lift on a horse and cart.
But it feels like I'm almost being, I don't know, disingenuous or almost offensive by saying that, because I'm basically saying it was an undeveloped country or whatever. But outside of Cork and Dublin.
Well, I think we were a third world country up until like the 19th century for sure.
Yeah.
Or 20th century, sorry.
Yeah, when you go back and you look at that, you then realise that actually the comparisons with the Romani communities or the Inuits or like communities whose culture, whose language was obviously there's all these amazing writers, but the oral history was incredibly dominated.
Well, so the dialect we speak in Ireland, it's kind of dying out now more so, I think, but there is a dialect called Hiberno English.
Okay.
So the little idiosyncrasies that we have as a culture come from almost direct translations from the Irish language.
Right.
So we even have a tense that doesn't exist in English. It does amazingly exist in African American vernacular.
Okay.
They call it AAVE now. I don't know what the E stands for, but it's I can't remember what the tense is called. It's probably like the future continuous or something. So you ever heard anyone say, she does be going to the shop? Yeah, she does be doing that. You know, that means she does that thing regularly.
Right.
She doesn't just do it, or she won't just do it. She does it all the time. She never stops doing it.
Oh God, yeah.
So we have a tense that doesn't exist in English, but a lot of our, I found it's easier to script small talk in Ireland than it is to script small talk in England. Because in England they tend to ask you a genuine question. Whereas here, it'll go something like this. How are you? Sure, grand, and yourself? Not too bad, not too bad. You know how it is. I do. How's the family? Sure, you know. I do. Fierce weather we're having, isn't it? And that's it. So they say something, you say something else. Nobody's saying anything.
Yeah.
But you need to everyone's just feeling each other out all the time. And we tend to talk in sort of stories instead of just, have you asked for directions yet?
Not for years. I did once actually in Belfast. I was. Did
you get told I wouldn't start from here?
Oh yeah.
Or if you go down that road and you hit the red building, you've gone too far.
Yes.
That sort of stuff. Nobody says exactly what they mean. It's such a roundabout way to get to where you're going. And a lot of that, I think, is people just feeling people out.
Right.
You know.
And I spent a lot of time in Cork and then Kerry and then also up to Galway and Mayo.
It's its own culture down there.
And a little bit of Sligo as well. Is Clare in Sligo?
No, Clare is. I'm from Sligo myself.
Yes.
Yeah. So Clare is. Oh gosh.
I think Clare might be Mayo.
Yeah.
It's around there, isn't it? It's on that
Yeah.
coast going up there somewhere.
Yeah, I think it might be a little further down.
Where's Knock?
Again. Knock is that the Midlands? That's where the Holy Mary did appear to them young children at some point.
I just remember all these little trips when I was a kid.
To Knock?
I have been to Knock.
Knock is brilliant. Did you get a holy candle?
No, my mum did. My mum's been a few times. We used to go.
You know that the holy water comes out of holy taps, so they don't have to bless the water.
Oh, is that right?
They just bless the taps.
They just bless the tap. I love it, and I love that part of the world, and I love. You know, going down to the Dingle and the Skellig Islands and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. But then you do realise that, actually, before motorways, before cars, before, when you look at Dublin and you look at, Trinity College and when you look at Belfast and you look at Queen's, when these places, even in Cork, when these universities were all open, people in Dingle were still on horses and carts.
Yeah.
Because they just hadn't built the roads.
Yeah.
And so when you have that culture, by necessity, you don't move that far. And therefore, by necessity, you have to make your own music, tell your own stories.
Yes.
Do all that sort of stuff.
Very musical culture, very story-driven culture as well. Yeah.
I read this amazing book once about the world of Shakespeare around the world. And this blew my mind.
Love Shakespeare.
Do you?
Yeah, I do.
Well, so it's a brilliant book. I can't remember the name of the writer, but there were several different chapters about Shakespeare all around the world. And one of them, and I bet there's a direct analogy, or I bet it happened in the southwest of Ireland as well. Shakespeare, massively popular with cowboys.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Because...
Oh, that's cool.
in the Gold Rush was before cinema.
Yeah.
And before radio.
Yeah.
It was before mass communication. It was... So you had all these people going to the west of America, going to California, all these cowboys, and they were going to their saloons, and they were drinking their beers, and there were sex workers and cancan girls, but they needed performance.
Yes, yeah.
And so if you're doing a play, and you're making up a play, and you're creating a play for the cowboys in the area, and you're a touring theatre company going around the saloons of the old Wild West.
Yeah.
What's the easiest plays to nick bits off?
Yeah.
To perform in your...
I suppose they were probably very accessible play books.
You're doing a version of Comedy of Errors. You're doing... You're mixing up Romeo and Juliet with a couple of banjo songs and a couple of... And Shakespeare was so popular because the plots of the plays...
So would they use the language, or did they adapt
Bits of, yeah. Yeah, they would use bits of the iambic pentameter, but they weren't even using the whole plots. Like you would have a bit of King Lear that would turn into something else.
Right.
Because those plays were so popular and performers knew them.
And they're very archetypal characters.
Very archetypal, yeah, absolutely. So you can have Midsummer Night's Dream. And you can do it in front of loads of cowboys.
That is so cool.
And I wonder, and again, I bet it happened, that in the west of Ireland and in lots of places around the UK and Ireland and Europe, and in Europe I imagine they would have their own great writers, that they would use those things as the basis for stuff and then build around it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd imagine they would. I mean, people are always looking for new ways to tell stories as well. So if they get anything from outside that they can
Yeah.
adapt.
And you know that whole thing about there's only like 7 stories.
Yes,
You
yeah.
know.
Is it Campbell? Oh God, I can't remember his first name, but he said there's one. There is the hero's journey, and that is pretty much
Yeah,
the
no,
extent of
I
it.
can
Yeah.
see that. And so you know, think of Shakespeare in the hero's journey. Think of the hero. Think of Macbeth or Hamlet. You know, think of just, you're following them. You can do
Yeah.
anything you want with that story.
Yeah.
And that's why I love it. That's why I love Ireland. It's why I love and discovering. So my mum was brought up in a convent. So her name was Mary Philomena Griffin. So we had a fairly good idea that she was Irish.
It's a very Irish name, like Mary Philomena.
There was a.
It's a very era specific Irish name.
Oh really?
Yeah, you wouldn't get a lot of Philomenas now.
No, that's a good point. So your 40s and 50s,
Definitely.
very Philomena.
Yeah.
And then when we discovered this family later on in life, like my mum was in her 30s and I was sort of 9 or 10, it just sort of made sense.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm Irish.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And when she grew up in a convent, it was here in Ireland, was it?
No,
or it was
in London.
Okay.
Yeah, my nan and her sister, in a very Irish way. Again, I might tell this story in other places. People are like, "God, that's weird." In Ireland, if I tell the story that my mum and her sister married 2 brothers, people are like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
go on."
Yeah. It is very Irish.
Tell me more.
Oh, yeah, sure, it's 2 old fellas living alone somewhere.
Moved over to London in the 40s.
Yeah.
And did the things that Irish girls do. And then we discovered that we had this big family that were still in London, moving back over to Cork and then to Kerry.
Yeah.
So Tralee. I met someone the other day. There's an Irish guy who lives in Cardiff called Chris Curley, and he's from a town called Brosna, which is where my nan is buried. Like,
Oh, wow.
it's a little town outside of. And I was like, oh yeah, but they were Downies. My granddad was a Downey.
Right.
And he was like, oh yeah, no, I know some Downies.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course you do. Oh yeah, I play.
It is, yeah. In
I play
Ireland,
heavily with some Downies.
definitely do that. Like, yeah. Oh, yeah, that'd be your cousins now.
Yeah. And do you miss Sligo? I'm sort of almost painting your childhood in Sligo as some sort of Angela's Ashes style.
Oh no! Well, I'm 40 now, so the earliest I'd remember would be the 80s, which is as close to Angela's Ashes as I get. No, it wasn't like we were poor, but like we were sort of single mum in the 90s poor, rather than 1940s Ireland poor. So like we had a house, we had food.
But it's mad different, isn't it, since the 90s?
Oh, it's crazy. It's so crazy. I mean, I still live a fairly frugal and simple life because I watched TV recently in a friend's house, and it was a animal channel. So like something I would have enjoyed watching. It was too much. I could see every pixel. My poor brain couldn't handle it.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting.
I watch stuff on my laptop. That's
That's good enough for you.
Yeah, it's good enough for me.
We could get it instantly.
Yes. Everything. I was chatting to, who was I chatting to about this? Sarah Jade, and I was saying we need an AI mum that just at some point says no. Just know you've had enough music, you've had enough porn, you've had enough of whatever the hell it is you've been on the internet 8 hours looking for.
Yeah.
You've had enough of it. Go to
Stop
bed.
now.
Go outside and play some football. Do you know? Like, go to your mate's house. Have a conversation.
That's right. Yeah.
It is. We have access to too much. I think that's where a lot of the sort of upset and anxiety is coming from for a lot of people.
I think our brains haven't quite
We've not caught up
with the technology yet.
No, we haven't. It's too much.
Yeah.
And I think we do need breaks. And I mean, really, it's only been like 10, 15 years, really.
Yeah. Yes. I think the first smartphone 2007, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, like, for a while, there was only a certain number of people who had it, and then everybody had it, and now it's in our pockets. And I think at some point, there's probably going to be warnings like the way there was with cigarettes.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you need a certain amount of, for your mental health, take a
Yeah,
break.
and I think, you know, there's so many more diagnoses of ADHD and stuff now. And
Yeah.
actually, I wonder whether they're diagnoses of a particular thing that's happened to your brain, or that's just life.
It's possible. It's also possible maybe these kids growing up with constantly changing content are actually having developmental problems because they're not spending enough time on one thing. But yeah, there's a lot of neurodivergence in the performance community. I know a lot of autistic ADHD comedians.
Yeah.
ADHD, I think, more for comedians. There's more autistic street performers and there's more ADHD comedians.
Yeah, that would
That's my theory.
Yeah, I've decided not to bother having the diagnosis because I'm just like, well, if all my...
I've had both at this stage. I'm just clocking them up.
All of my friends have got it. My personality's like my friends. I've got it. I'm fine.
When you find your tribe and you find out they all have the same condition, you're like, yeah, okay, that makes sense.
We're there.
I think it helps creativity-wise because neurodivergent brains make different connections.
Yeah.
Than typical brains. I think.
Yeah, but it's the difference between typical and atypical. You know, it's the difference between...
If you're typical, you're not going to shine really in that particular
You're
area.
looking at something from the same direction.
Yeah.
You know, whereas, you know, being atypical exactly means, well, let's look at...
different.
Yeah, I can't help but look at different things. And it's about how you manage that in your life, and it's how you manage that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, for stand-ups,
It amazes me for performers because there is a certain amount of organisational skills that are needed.
Yeah,
and self-management skills.
Yeah.
In order to be a performer.
And a lot of us don't have it.
Oh, terrible at it.
One of the reasons that I'm good at my job, I'm convinced that 80% of the reason that I get so much warm-up work is that I'm very punctual.
Right, yes.
So that organisation, I'm not very organised, but I'm very...
But you're there.
I'm there.
On time.
On time, in the right place.
Yeah.
I think Sean Walsh once went to a gig in Hereford and he was meant to be in Hertford. Darren Harriott had the same thing the other week. He was meant to be in Stratford upon Avon and went to Stratford in London.
Oh my God. I did turn up to was it Birmingham Airport a day early once. Spent 24 hours in the airport.
There you go. Yeah, it's us, you know.
Yeah.
I'm all right with it. I lean into it.
I found with fellas more so than women, but I do think there is more neurodivergent men. They tend to marry somebody who's very good at organising stuff.
Yeah, good point.
Sort of, keeps them on.
Yeah,
track.
They link together.
Yes.
They link together quite nicely.
Yeah. With women, well, really, if you're heterosexual, you've men to choose from. So.
Good point. Good point.
I do love them, but they tend to need as much looking after as I do. So we're not helping each other.
No, that is also a very good point. We do need a lot of looking after.
Yes, yeah.
We're a nightmare.
So, what advice would you give comedians? Not necessarily starting out, but comedians who want to kind of further their career a little.
So for a start, it's a numbers game. Just do it as often as possible. You know, do everything.
Right.
When you start, if someone says, go to this gig, if you can afford it, do it. If it's I started at 23, about a year in, someone asked me to host an over 35 singles nights.
I'd be curious enough. I would.
I
need to know.
I do it. I've done them all. I do everything.
Yeah.
I'm a professional stand-up comedian. I do.
Have you done the cruises?
I've not done cruises. No, I don't know.
A lot of street performers go for the cruises.
I'd be interested. I did last week because I do a bit of community stuff in Bristol, and there's a park, and they had one of those billy cart races.
Yeah.
And I hosted the billy cart racing day the other week, and I loved it so much. Do everything.
Yeah.
Do everything, and at the same time, always think about your stand-up. Always think about your material. And that combination of doing both will will mean that you will always get better. And you might get better incrementally, and those increments can be really small.
Yeah.
But your curve will always be upwards.
Yes.
Your curve will always be upwards if you are always gigging and always writing. If you're turning it over, even if those gigs are 3 people, 4 people, eventually those 3 and 4 people will turn into 8 and 9 people, and they will turn into 19 and 20 people, and that will be 40 and 50 people. You know,
Right.
gradually it goes in the right direction. It always does.
Yeah.
So keep on gigging. Keep on. Don't think about anything else. Don't think about the great comedian Adam Bloom has just got a new book out actually, which is about writing jokes, which is really good.
Right.
But he said, don't think about anything until you've done 100 gigs.
Yeah.
Don't think about your voice. Don't think about your career. Don't think about. Just
Yeah.
do it. Do 100 gigs.
That's not bad, because I was told I'd be shit till I did 1,000 gigs and street shows, so 100 gigs is a
100
lot
gigs.
more
Do
manageable.
100 gigs. Yeah, no.
And then
do
have a look at it, do 100 more.
Do 100 gigs and start thinking about your life. But do you play a musical instrument?
I can play a song on the ukulele.
Okay, well you juggle.
I do juggle.
Okay.
Yes.
So if I was to say to you, if you had never juggled before,
Oh, yeah.
and I was like, okay, so just to let you know, what you're going to do now is that there are 150 people out there, and these, we call them clubs. I've got 5 of these, and you're going to go out there, and you're going to juggle in front of those 150 people.
Yeah.
And you're going to actually, I don't just want you, I want you to create your own routine as well.
Wow.
So good luck. You would think I was an idiot.
Yeah.
You go, well, no, that's just the most stupid idea anyone has ever. No one is doing that.
Yeah.
You stand up.
That's exactly what you.
Because clubs, juggling, you can do it on your own. You can do it in your garden. You can do it in a big shed. You can be. Whereas, even though there are comedy courses, even though you can learn how to do it, you don't do it until you've done it.
Yeah.
You don't do it until you've got out in front of those people. So you have to do it. The default of stand up should be dying on your hole.
Yeah.
Because everyone thinks they're funny.
Yeah.
Even the introverts in their group will make them laugh, or their partner laugh, or whatever. Everyone thinks they're a bit funny. So you're telling me that our job involves going into a group of people who already think they're funny, naturally. They're all a little bit pissed. They've all paid money for it. And I'm going, oh, just to let you know, I'm the one worth paying. You all think you're funny. I'm actually funnier than you because you're paying me. Like, the default for stand-up should be failure at every turn. Especially when you're trying out new material. Especially when you're doing new stuff. So lean into the failure. Enjoy the failure. Accept the failure.
When do you
and
know
learn
something hasn't worked then? Because I mean...
When you get nothing.
Yeah. But sure, say you come out with you've got a new bit and you've tried it, dead.
Yeah.
You might maybe even got booed and somebody brought a tomato with them. Who knows?
Yeah.
Just for shits and giggles. Do you try that again?
Sometimes. Sometimes if I'm confident enough in it.
Shit audience.
Yeah, not that they're a shit audience. Just that if I'm confident enough that I've. Oh no! If it dies that badly.
Yeah.
There's something wrong with what you're doing.
Yeah. You got to tweak it.
But you've got to change it a little bit. Sometimes I will have an idea and there will just be nothing. The audience will be like, we don't get that at all. And you look at it and you go, yeah, I don't either actually. I don't know why I thought that was a good idea. 3 or 4 maybe? 3 or 4 goes at it. I write on stage. So I don't write on my phone or on a laptop or on a book. I write while I'm there.
Yeah.
And
do you take notes then afterwards?
Yeah, and I'll think, but I think about it. I think about it and I'll run it through. So if I've got a good run of gigs in Bristol doing new material things, especially if I can do more than one a night, and I can run that stuff through, I can need a good 5 or 6 goes at it.
Yeah.
And I'll usually give myself 5 or 6 goes at it before giving up on the concept, because I'm sort of experienced enough and confident enough and maybe arrogant enough to go, no, there is something there.
Yeah, you're just not sure which part of it yet.
Yes, and how to peak it or pace it, or how to finesse it, or how to, like, there are sometimes little keys to little bits of material where you're like, okay, right, I know that if I do that tomorrow, that's the bit that's gonna work. And when you've done that, sometimes it's about the ending. Sometimes it's you get everything right apart from the punchline, and you're like, and even if it's not a punchline in the traditional sense of the word, as in end of the joke,
yes,
the bit has to end somewhere. So you have to work out the end. You have to work out the structure. But most of the time, I know that within 3 or 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a reasonable amount, because you don't want to keep hammering at something that just isn't working.
And sometimes you're just throwing a little concept.
Yeah.
And often, if I'm comparing especially, I might say to the audience, I've got these ideas that I thought of in the shower before I left my house, or I thought about them in the car. Can I tell you this? And they'll be like, yeah. And you go, blah, blah, blah. And they go, oh, yeah, something there. You go, brilliant, there's something there. Or you go, yeah, there's nothing there, is there? Doesn't make any sense. What was I thinking? But you have to take those swings.
Yeah. I think I'd like to try England for stand up. I gotta hit Dublin at some point as well, just because that's kind of my home patch.
Yeah, you must.
But I do like the English sense of humour. I do. It's so sort of self-depreciating and
and also different parts of the UK,
Yeah.
and also different types of people as well. Posh people, you've got to go everywhere.
Yeah.
You got to you've got to try it all. That's the joy of stand-up, is that ability to try it all.
Yeah.
That's so exciting.
Yes. Yeah, and I do find there's a lot of comedians I've noticed they're trying comedians here in Northern Ireland. They're trying crowd work, as it were. What advice would you give them? Because I know how I feel about it. Like, and as a street performer, you've no choice but to talk to individuals, because you need the fuckers to stay there.
Yeah.
So more people will come and stand beside them. Whereas in it's different when you're on a stage, I think, and I think that feels different for them.
Yeah.
So for me, it's a conversation. I just have a conversation. If it doesn't go anywhere, I move on to the next person.
I like to open it up. So I like to kind of, rather than just go along the front row and go, what do you do? Nothing there. What do you do? Nothing there. What do you do? Oh, that's good. We'll talk to you.
Yeah,
I like to go, what do you do? Oh, okay. Does anyone else do that? Oh, yeah, you over there.
Oh,
do you do
okay,
that?
That's an interesting way of taking it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because then it gives you options.
It takes it away. It makes, you can be in control of it. And also, I talk about food a lot on the stage. I'm getting very hungry. I talk about food a lot on stage, and everyone's got an opinion about it. And I can get really angry and really passionate about the most stupid thing, because food is inconsequential. It doesn't matter that I get angry about the flavours of Monster Munch or the best spherical food.
What is the best spherical food?
I think all spherical foods are great, actually.
Spherical foods are pretty good. I've never thought about it before, but now that I think about it, it is pleasing that they are round.
Like profiteroles, Ferrero Rocher, meatballs, Scotch eggs, peas. Like, yes, I think your sphere, that's your top tier shape for food. And I talk to audiences. Specifically about spherical food.
They probably didn't know they had an opinion about spherical food before you mentioned it either.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Great crowd work can be great.
Yeah.
Jason Byrne, Adam Hills, brilliant. There's a little bit of a thing now on Instagram where you're filming your chat on stage, and then you're putting that on your TikTok.
Yeah.
And the reason you're doing that is because you're not burning material. You're just great version.
I feel okay with burning material, because I don't think I'm going to be using a lot of this for very long. So.
But great chat is great.
Yeah.
Boring chat is boring.
Yes, I do like interaction with the crowd, and I like to be able to see them. I don't like this
The
turn the lights out thing. Like you were saying, you have friends who can, if it's pitch black, they'll just do their set
straight
and
to the
they'll
back
do
of
it
the
well,
room.
and
Yeah,
they'll smash it.
yeah. No, I like
not
to
one
see
of
them.
those people.
Well, at heart, you're a street entertainer.
Yeah,
You've done it for ages,
yeah,
and you just have to work out how to take those skills
yeah.
into the world of stand-up, and you can. You know, and you
Yes,
can
yeah.
combine. They're not mutually exclusive. You can do both.
Yeah. Final question.
Final question before I go and
Okay,
eat.
and this is one I ask everybody.
Oh, yes.
Why is performance important? Is it important? And if so, why?
Why is performance important? I think all performance is essentially just communicating. I think all performance is essentially just a big chat. The great Scottish comedian Phil Kay told me that. We're talking one-on-one. If there's someone else here, I'm using the same skills. For those 2, 4, same, 8, 16, 32, 64. Why should I change my skills? Why should I change my communication just because you are now one of 64 people? I'm just talking, I'm just communicating. And humans love nothing more than communicating. You know, we love nothing more than sharing stories, hearing stories. We love nothing more than... and it's not just about social. Like, people talk about it being social. It doesn't always have to be. We like listening and hearing. We like music. We like things communicated at us. And we like communicating things, how we feel. And that is what performance is. At its heart, it is just someone telling someone else some stuff.
Yeah. That's lovely. I like that. Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Mark.
Oh,
It's
thank
been an
you.
absolute pleasure.
Thank you
and
for
thank
having
you
me.
for telling us about comedy and giving us a few tips here in the north
Well,
of
I
Ireland,
hope-
Northern Ireland.
I hope I hope it helps, because it's such a great city with great people.
So much potential here.
Oh,
There really is.
huge amounts to do
Yeah.
wonderful, weird stuff, as well as
Yeah.
like this is it's a brilliantly odd place.
It is.
Which is exactly with
That's why I fit in here.
with juxtapositions at every corner,
Yeah.
and comedy is based on juxtapositions.
Yes. Yeah.
It's brilliant.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're an absolute star. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. And that is the last in the first season of the Renegade Context podcast. Thank you very much to Mark and to everyone else who volunteered their time to talk to me about performance. If you want to help out this podcast, you can go to patreon.com/Renegade Context, where there is extras for patrons only. And I'm currently in the process of recording and editing season 2, so I will let you know soon enough when that's coming out. And last but not least, if you have enjoyed these podcasts and you have found them interesting or useful or just enjoyable to listen to, drop me a comment. Let me know what it was you liked about it, and we'll try and bring you more of that. All right, guys. See you on the next one.